here's a basic tutorial on how to build text animations. This is a sermon series roll-in for the Say Yes series, and I've already built one section of the text animation, so I'll just show you what that looks like now. Okay, so we're going to build that same thing, except in this section here. So the first thing is, this currently is just a JPEG, so I can't separate out the layers, so I'm going to do that now. So the first thing to do that is I'm going to right click down here in the project bin and do new item, color map. Hit OK, and I'm going to grab the little eyedropper tool and choose the same purple. I'm going to name it purple, and then I'm just going to drag it over here. We'll put that in the right spot later. So now I'm just going to make each one of these text lines. So I still like to use the legacy titler. I haven't really messed with the new one too much. I'm sure it's great, but I'm going to use the legacy for right now. So the way to get to that is to file new legacy title. So I'm just going to name it the first line, and I'm just going to duplicate each line. I happen to know that this is Avenir next. I haven't been able to like nail it exactly, but I think it's somewhere around the 130 weight or medium weight, 130 size. The color default is not totally white, so we're going to bring up that color and take it to totally white. Okay, so now I'm just doing that for 4 lines. Okay, so now that I've got those made, I'm going to move them up in the timeline. You'll see why in just a second, to get them out of the way. So now, if you notice on this previous one, I've split this solid into 4 sections. So I'm going to do that, and the way I did it was I'll add a crop. I'll come over to effects and search for crop, drag that over, and the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to go right 75%, and that if I get rid of this line here, that so that's gonna be a question. I'm going to actually copy this and paste it. And one thing to note is the reason if normally it would just be standard setup to where video track 1 is highlighted, that would copy over my first track. I don't want that. So what I do is I select 3, and then it will paste onto 3, which is helpful. So I'm just going to basically drag these to where they're on top of each other. And now, now I'm just going to move this crop over. So, and I'm going to do that in 25% increments. So you can see now if I hide the others, the second one is now shifted over a little bit. And I'll do the same thing for the next one. I had the wrong one selected. There we go. Now this one. Nope. All right, and then the last one ends up being 75% left. All right, so now if I unhide all of those, they create a solid. So at this point, I am going to create the animation. So if you notice these things over here, these little dots, they're called keyframes. And that's the key to animating anything. So what I'm going to do is come over here, and I'm going to just come, so like 18 to 19, that's 1 second. So I'm going to say I want this whole thing to take about 3/4 of a second. So if I come to 19 seconds, then that's about 3/4 of a second. So, and I'm just going to go down the line on each of these, and I'm going to turn on the keyframe for the position by hitting this little clock on each of these. Okay. So now I'm going to come back to the beginning, and I am going to move each of these over to where they're off of the screen. And so whenever I'm doing this, it's creating another keyframe at the beginning. So if I were to watch this back, now that just looks like one solid coming, building in, which we don't want that. So if you hover over this little FX thing on each clip, you can right click, go to motion, and hit position, and it will show the keyframes down here. I'm going to do that for each of these. And then I'm going to, so like if you right click on the keyframe, you can choose different keyframe behaviors. And I like Bezier. So we're going to choose Bezier on all of these. I'll show you what that does here in a second. So I'm going to, so you can see it easier, I'm going to hide all but one of these sections. So if you watch this back, that played, it moved in a very like linear fashion, which we don't want. So I'm going to come in here, click on the keyframes, and these little blue tab things pop up. So I'm going to drag this one all the way down and all the way to the left, and the same thing with this one. And that, you see how that it starts fast and then it slows down into place. And so that's kind of how I generally like to animate things, is in that sort of style. You can do the reverse of it. On the way, when we build this out, this animation out, we'll go the opposite. Well, I take that back. We won't go the opposite direction. But you can do all sorts of things with the ramping of the speed of animations. So the next thing we're going to do is, now it still looks like a solid sliding in. And the other one didn't do that. And I think there's probably multiple ways around this. I initially thought about putting drop shadows on each of these so that you could see the independent sections, but what I ultimately decided to do was to reverse it so that the last one comes in first. So I'm just gonna, if I click on one keyframe, hold down shift, click on the other one, I can move them together, and that keeps the timing, which is important. So I'm going to move them like this, and we're going to watch that back. So that feels pretty good. Let me compare that to the other one. I think that one's a little bit faster, but I'm feeling good. Well, maybe not. I'm feeling good about that timing. I'm going to move these over here. To where they kind of start on top of this picture. And then I'm going to drag the picture over all the way. So now they come in on top of the picture. I think I'm going to actually tighten these up a little bit by just dragging the last keyframe in a little bit on each of them, and I'm going to be careful to kind of keep the same angle so they still feel similar. Yeah, okay. So now we bring the text in, which is up here. All right, so obviously we want the text to build in as well. So we're going to do keyframes for the text, and we're going to kind of, if we think we kind of want the text to start once the whole thing is built, this is kind of our starting point for the text. And if we think that we want each line to have like about a half a second to 3/4 second animation, then I'm going to kind of come here and, well, let me just straighten these up. And again, I'm going to come and turn on keyframe position for each of these. Okay, so now I'm going to come back to the end of that background animation, which I can see because of that keyframe. And I'm going to now choose how I want the text to animate in. So I want on the other one that I did, the first line slides in from the left, so I'm going to bring it over here, and the next section came in from the top. That's not right. Oh, these are switched, but that's okay. So we'll bring that up, and then the next line will come in from the right, and the last line will come in from the bottom. Okay, so if you were to just look at that now, it's kind of boring. So again, I'm going to right click on the little FX thing and choose position for all of these. And again, I'm going to go Bezier. Okay, so now we change the animation curve. Okay, but that still looks kind of weird. We don't want it to happen all at the same time. So if you notice, I've got this text line set up to be inverse of what this is. So the second line, we're going to just move over a little bit. So this is like two sentences, right? That sounds nearly impossible, period. Is this really you talking to me? So I'm going to create a little bit of a pause in the animation by pulling these two over more. That sounds really impossible. Is this really you talking to me? All right, so, and a lot of times I'll try to read things out loud to make sure that it's on screen long enough. And this animation, I think, can maybe come a hair more this way. So the next thing is we want to hide the start points for all of these lines so that they just kind of come in out of nothingness. So I'm going to come to the point where everything's built in completely, and I'm going to click on the first line, and I'm going to right click and choose nest. We can't create masks on the same layer as the text because the mask would then just follow the animation properties for the text. So it would never be hidden. So this is basically just another layer. I'm going to come over here to opacity, and I'm going to hit this box. It creates a 4-point mask. I'm going to take the feather all the way down. What is going on over here? This is weird. All right, we're going to save and restart Premiere Pro. Okay, I'm back and I have audio working now. So, okay, where was I? Mask. Okay. All right, so now I have this mask, and I can hover over it, and the hand shows up, and I can move it around. So you can see if I move it here, I can see that first line because this mask is on a layer above that first line. So I'm going to move my playhead over to the end, so I can. This is where I want the line to end up. So I know that this comes in from the left, so I'm just going to position this mask to where it cuts it off, where I want it to cut it off. And I can change the size of it by doing that. So now if I watch this back, you can see that line kind of built in. So I'm going to keep going and do this for the rest of them. Turning feathering down is important. And this one's coming in from the top, so I'm positioning the mask to where it slides in from the top. This one comes in from the right. Again, get rid of that feathering. So like really the only line that really matters is the one that is going to be coming from. So this one's going to be coming from over here. This line needs to be straight.
Music bed.
All right, one more. All right, so that is the animation setup. I still haven't done the outro, but we're gonna watch this to see, just to make sure we're going the right direction.
Music bed. Music bed.
Okay, I'm liking that. I'm going to try reading it out loud this time to make sure it's long enough at this point. That sounds nearly
Music
impossible.
bed.
Is this really you talking to me? I think it needs to be a little bit longer. So like these text layers, these nest layers, I cannot make them longer. See how I can't make that longer? What I can do is double click on it. It opens it up in another sequence. You might have to find it. There it is. And I'm just going to extend that. That will allow me to make the nested sequences longer. Because you can only make these nests as long as the sequences within them, so I'm just going to increase this by a little bit there. We'll worry about the pictures underneath after we get the animation sorted out. So that sounds nearly
Music
impossible. Is this really you talking to me? So right there is where I want the animation to start, probably. Maybe cheat it just a little bit. Okay, so I kind of am being a little bit lazy on the end of this animation, and I'm going to build this whole thing out as one sequence, just so I don't have to. It just makes it a little bit easier, and it will look fine. So I'm going to nest everything together, and I'm going to hit the little stopwatch to start a keyframe. I'm going to move it over, and I'm going to move everything down to about there. And then I'm going to hit the FX thing again so I can see the keyframes. I'll zoom in. Oop, it's the wrong way. Okay, so again, go into Bezier. and again I'm slamming it this way. So that may be a little fast, so extend it a little more, extend these a little more. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to nest this again so that I can get another layer that I can create a mask over. So, and again, I'm going to find the point at which it's done, the animation's finished, right there. I'll create another mask, delete all of the feather, and I'm going to, well, maybe I should go the other way. Yeah, so now I'm going to, I guess, make sure that the entire thing can fit within this mask. And this bottom, since it's building out in the bottom, I want to make sure that that is as straight as possible. So now whenever, yeah, so it disappears. So now it's onto the solids, and I'm there. So I'm going to start by figuring out where I want it to start, and I kind of want it to start kind of behind the text moving, so maybe somewhere in there. I'll go, and so now that I've already turned on keyframes, if I want to create another keyframe, I will have to hit this button, add remove keyframe, on each of them. And I'm going to go maybe like half a second. And again, I want these to slide down. So by changing the position, that automatically creates a keyframe. Okay, so now I'm going to clean up. Do I want to do that way? I'm going to go reverse now. I might change that in a second. Okay, so I want this thing to start over on the right side, which I believe is this one, so I'm going to move the rest of them back here. Oop. Remember, hit shift so you can grab another keyframe. Yeah. Now I think I might want to make this keyframe a little bit longer. Sometimes you can't see the keyframe thing if you don't have your track height tall enough. So there you go. Make that a little longer. Yeah, that's sounding good. Let's watch that whole thing.
Music bed.
Yeah, feels good. So now you can see this thing's a lot longer than it was before, so I'm going to move everything underneath it. And I'm going to move it to where it changes to a new person right when the animation finishes. I feel like that kind of felt okay. I don't want to burn a person
Music bed.
during the animation, so. Yeah. All right, so there's how I built the animation for that section. I've got 2 more sections that I'm going to build real quick, and I'll come back and talk about the ending. So I now have finished the animation for 2 more sections, and I'm going to tighten up the beginning and the end and the music, and then I'll export a rough version of this before I buy the actual music. So anyway, here's the ending.
Music bed.
and that's probably fine. What I am going to do is put a white solid underneath this logo, so that I can change the size of it. Okay, so I'm wanting to add just a little bit of scaling, like animate it a little bit. So I'm going to start maybe 70 range. So I'm just going to hit position to create a keyframe, and then way out here I will make it like, let's go 85. That might be too fast, but I must not have created an actual keyframe. Something's weird here. Oh. Okay, so basically in order to scale this, I need to now use keyframes on the scaling section. So I'm going to start it off at around 70. See what that's like. I'm going to hit the stopwatch on the scale line. And come out here to the end and make it 85. And we'll see if that's too fast. Yeah, it is. So we'll bring it down to like 78. And it still feels a little fast. Except I might, on the front end, make this a little bit bigger. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to create a fade out, and I could like do cross dissolves on these, but whenever I've got clips layered on top of each other, sometimes it doesn't work very well. So I'm going to create a new color matte that's black. And we'll add it in there, and now I'm going to add a cross dissolve to that. Cross dissolve, extend it. Okay, so alright, that feels good. So now it's to the beginning of it, and I gave myself some leeway here with the music.
Music bed.
So I don't know that I really want it to just
Music
pop
bed.
in.
Music bed.
So I'm going to try doing the fade in thing.
Music bed.
Yeah, that feels better. I'm just going to watch the whole thing now.
Music bed. Music bed.
Okay, so now I'm going to fade out some audio here. I will, once I get the group to look at this and get to go ahead and just feel like people are liking the music, then I will actually buy the music. This track will cost around $160 to license, so I want to make sure everyone likes it before I license it. But let me add in a fade to the beginning of the audio, and then we're exporting.
Music bed.
Yeah, so now we're going to export. I'm going to save real quick. And to export, I'm just going to go File, Export Media. And I am going to choose H.264. And we'll choose high bit rate because it's only going to be 70 megabytes. But whenever I export it for, well, I don't know. If these are like super high quality pictures, I probably would do a final export on much higher than the high bit rate. But since the pictures are kind of low quality, I don't know that it'll really matter. I'm going to save this into the same folder, if I can remember what folder it is. Oh. All right, and now we're exporting.